She mocked the human warrior until her mother said, "He's your father." The city of Zithra glowed under twin suns, a sprawling metropolis built on technology and ambition. Towering spires pierced the sky, and streets hummed with the movement of aliens from countless species, each walking with purpose. Among them, humans were rare. To most Zitherans, they were fragile and ill-suited to survive in a universe dominated by powerful alien races. Yet one human had arrived, and his presence had already stirred whispers across the city. Lyra, a young alien girl with silver-blue skin and eyes that reflected the light of the suns, walked briskly through the busy streets. She moved with confidence, her head held high as if the entire world revolved around her. She was used to being noticed, used to being admired. Today, however, her attention was fixed on the figure moving in the crowd ahead of her. The human stood out instantly. He was tall, with a broad frame and sharp, intense features that contrasted with the sleek, angular forms of Zitharan aliens. His hair was dark, cropped short, and his eyes held a calm strength that made even the bravest alien pause. He wore a simple uniform, nothing ornate, yet the way he carried himself commanded respect. Lyra's lips curled into a smirk. "So this is the famous human warrior everyone talks about," she muttered to herself. She had heard stories of him. Tales of his strength, his courage, even his victories in far-off battles. The elders spoke of humans as clever, adaptable, but weak compared to Zitharan power. She was eager to test these stories for herself. Gathering a small group of her friends, she approached the human. They giggled and whispered, excitement and mischief dancing in their eyes. Lyra stopped a few feet away, crossing her arms. "Well, human," she said, her voice dripping with mockery, "do you really expect us to be impressed? I have faced opponents far stronger than you, and they didn't even make me flinch." The human didn't reply. He merely observed her with a calm, steady gaze, unshaken by her words. Lyra's friends laughed, emboldening her. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue. Or are you too weak to speak to a Zitharan warrior?" Still, the human remained silent. His calm irritated her. Lyra didn't like being ignored. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a sharp edge. "Do you think standing there like a statue makes you look impressive? You look ordinary, weak." Finally, the human spoke. His voice was deep, steady, carrying the weight of experience. "Strength is not always shown by words or appearances. Sometimes it is shown by actions." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Actions? Ha, then show me. Prove that humans are more than stories and whispers." Before he could respond, a sudden commotion erupted in the street nearby. A hover vehicle, carrying a group of young alien children, malfunctioned, spinning out of control. The crowd screamed and scattered. Without hesitation, the human sprang forward, moving faster than Lyra thought possible. He grabbed the vehicle just in time, steadying it and preventing it from crashing into the crowd. The children stared at him wide-eyed, trembling, while the crowd murmured in astonishment. Lyra blinked. She had expected weakness, perhaps clumsiness, but what she saw was skill, precision, and bravery. She wanted to deny it, to turn away, but her pride held her in place. "It was just luck," she said quickly, forcing a laugh. "Even a blind predator can stumble into the right move sometimes." The human straightened, letting go of the vehicle. He didn't respond to her mockery. Instead, he turned and continued walking through the street as if nothing had happened, calm and composed. Lyra's friends whispered among themselves, clearly impressed despite themselves, but Lyra refused to show it. That evening, Lyra returned home, her mind still swirling with thoughts of the human warrior. Her mother, Elisara, waited in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal. She watched Lyra silently, sensing her daughter's inner turmoil. Lyra sat at the table, her pride still intact. "You won't believe what I saw today," she began, recounting the encounter. "A human, he saved those children without breaking a sweat." "It was ridiculous," she laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Something about the human lingered in her mind, a stubborn sense that he was more than she had assumed. Elisara placed a bowl of steaming food in front of her daughter. She didn't speak immediately, letting Lyra continue her story. When Lyra finally paused, Elisara's voice broke the silence, calm and measured. "Lyra," she said softly, "there is something you need to know about that human." Lyra frowned, curious despite herself. "What do you mean? He's just a human, that's all." Elisara's eyes met hers, steady and unyielding. "He is more than that. Adrian Kane, he is your father." Lyra froze. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. She stared at her mother, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling. That's impossible. That human, my father." Elisara nodded slowly. Yes, years ago, during a diplomatic mission, he came to our planet. He saved our people during a war, and in that time, we became close. You are the result of that union. I kept it a secret to protect you and to keep the peace. Lyra felt a swirl of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, curiosity. She had spent her whole life mocking humans, believing them weak. Now, the one she had ridiculed, the one whose calm had irritated her, was her father. She felt a strange pull, a desire to confront him, to see for herself if this human warrior could truly be part of her. "You mean all this time I've been insulting my own father?" she asked, her voice shaky. Elisara reached out, placing a gentle hand on Lyra's. "It is not your fault that you didn't know, but now you do, and it is time for you to see him for yourself." Lyra's mind raced. She thought about the encounter in the street, the way he had saved the children, his calm strength, and the way he had ignored her mockery. Could this human really be her father? Could he be as remarkable as he seemed? She spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The image of the human warrior haunted her thoughts. By morning, she had made a decision. She would find him. She needed answers, and more than that, she needed to understand the man who had shaped a part of her life without her knowing. Lyra left her home at dawn, slipping through the city streets with purpose. The city was alive with activity: merchants calling out their wares, vehicles gliding along magnetic tracks, and alien citizens moving with precision and intent. Yet her focus remained on one goal: finding Adrian Kane. She located the barracks where the human had been stationed, a massive structure of metal and glass. Aliens of all shapes and sizes trained within, their movements precise and disciplined. Lyra entered cautiously, observing the scene. And there he was, standing at the center, training a group of recruits with calm authority. The sight of him was startling. He moved with grace, precision, and strength, issuing commands with confidence. Every motion, every word carried weight. He was not just strong, he was extraordinary. Lyra felt a mixture of awe and fear, but also curiosity. She stepped closer, determined to speak with him. Adrian noticed her approach. His eyes, sharp and penetrating, met hers. "Lyra," he said, his voice calm but filled with recognition. Lyra froze. You know my name?" He nodded. "Your mother told me. She said you would want to meet me one day." Lyra's mouth opened, then closed. She didn't know what to say. She had come ready to mock, ready to challenge him, but seeing him in person, seeing the calm strength radiating from him, left her speechless. Adrian smiled faintly, as if understanding her hesitation. "I understand if you are angry, confused, or even afraid. But I hope, in time, you will understand why I have stayed away, and why I have waited for this moment." Lyra struggled to contain her emotions. She felt a strange connection to this man, a pull that was both terrifying and compelling. She realized that her life had just shifted in a way she could not have imagined. The human warrior she had mocked, the man she had dismissed, was her father. And the journey to understanding him, to discovering the truth about herself, had just begun. Outside, the city of Zithra continued to hum with life, unaware that a new chapter was beginning, one that would test strength, courage, and the bond between a human and his alien daughter. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward. It was time to face the man she had mocked and the father she was only now beginning to know. Lyra stood frozen for a long moment, her eyes locked on Adrian Kane. She could not believe what she was seeing. The human warrior, the man she had mocked and dismissed in her mind, was now standing in front of her as her father. Her heart raced, a mixture of fear, confusion, and curiosity swirling inside her. She had spent her entire life thinking of humans as weak, fragile creatures, yet here was proof to the contrary: strong, calm, and almost untouchable. Adrian's expression remained steady. "You have questions," he said softly, as if reading her mind. Lyra swallowed hard. "Questions?" she echoed. "Yes, I have a lot of questions, but first, why didn't you ever tell me?" Adrian's eyes darkened slightly, and for a moment, Lyra thought she saw a flicker of pain in them. "Your mother and I agreed it was safer for you not to know," he explained. "The galaxy is not always kind to humans, especially on a planet like Zithra. If people knew I had a child here, it could have put you in danger." Lyra frowned, trying to process his words. "So all these years, all this time, I've been living without knowing who my father is because you thought I wasn't strong enough to handle it." Adrian shook his head. "No, not because of that. I knew you were strong. I just wanted to protect you until the right moment came. Until you were ready to understand." Lyra's mind spun. The thought that someone could have been protecting her without her knowing was unsettling, yet at the same time it was strangely comforting. She wanted to hate him, wanted to mock him as she had before, but she could not. Something about his presence demanded respect. "You saved children today," she said slowly, her voice still tinged with disbelief. "And you didn't even care about their parents or anyone watching. Why?" Adrian took a deep breath. "Because it was the right thing to do. Humans, we believe in helping others when we can, even if it means risking ourselves. That is how we survive in a universe that is often harsh and unfair." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. She had never thought of humans that way. All her life, she had believed they were weak, surviving only through luck or chance. Yet this man, her father, embodied everything she had been taught to mock. Courage, honor, and selflessness radiated from him like an invisible shield. She wanted to turn away to run back to the safety of her home, but something kept her rooted to the spot. Curiosity, the need to know more. "Then you are really my father?" she asked, her voice small, almost a whisper. Adrian nodded. "Yes, I am. And I know this is a lot for you to take in, but I want you to understand me, to understand who you are." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Understand you? I barely know you. You are a stranger to me. Why should I even care?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Because part of who you are comes from me. You cannot escape it, no matter how much you try. And if you are willing, I can teach you about it, about what it means to be human, to survive and fight with courage." Lyra hesitated. She wanted to refuse, wanted to continue believing that humans were insignificant. But deep down, a part of her longed to know more, to understand this man who had saved her life without even realizing it. "Fine," she said finally, her voice stubborn but tinged with curiosity. "Teach me, show me. If I am truly supposed to be part human, then show me what that means." Adrian nodded. "Good, but first you must learn humility. Humans are strong, yes, but strength is not always shown in combat. It is also in patience, in wisdom, and in the courage to face fear." Over the next few days, Adrian began teaching Lyra. At first, it was simple lessons: how to observe, how to anticipate danger, how to move without panic. He emphasized patience and awareness, things aliens often overlooked in their reliance on sheer power. Lyra struggled at first, frustrated by her own clumsiness and the subtlety of human methods. She was used to relying on speed, agility, and raw strength, yet Adrian insisted that strategy and thought were just as important. One afternoon, as the twin suns blazed high above the city, Adrian led Lyra to an empty training ground. "Watch me first," he said, demonstrating a sequence of movements that combined precision, balance, and calculated force. "Notice how I do not waste energy. Every motion has a purpose. Every strike has a goal. Humans survive by making every action count." Lyra watched intently. She saw the flow of his movements, the way he anticipated each step, each reaction. She realized then that humans were not weaker, they were simply different. Their strength was in adaptation, in thinking quickly and using every advantage. "Now you try," Adrian said, stepping back. Lyra lunged forward, attempting to mimic his movements. She faltered immediately, tripping over her own feet and nearly falling. Adrian caught her gently. "Slow down, think, do not rush. Strength without control is meaningless." Lyra gritted her teeth. "I don't need slow, I need fast." Adrian shook his head. "Speed without precision is wasted effort. Learn to combine the two, and then you will be unstoppable." Days turned into weeks. Lyra trained relentlessly, pushing herself beyond what she thought possible. She began to understand the human way of thinking, anticipating, adapting, and using intelligence as a weapon. Slowly, her confidence grew, not just in combat but in herself. She saw that she could be stronger than she ever imagined. Yet even as she trained, doubts lingered. She still remembered her earlier mockery, the way she had laughed at him without knowing who he truly was. She hated that she had been wrong, that her assumptions about humans had been shattered. But Adrian never scolded her. He simply guided her, letting her learn in her own way. One evening, as the suns began to set, casting long shadows across the city, Lyra and Adrian sat on a high terrace overlooking Zithera. The city glowed with a million lights, and the hum of life below was steady and constant. Lyra's thoughts were heavy with everything she had learned, everything she had realized about herself and about humans. "You've changed me," she admitted quietly, almost shyly. "I thought humans were weak, fragile, but I see now that I was wrong. You are incredible. And maybe I can be too." Adrian looked at her, his gaze steady and kind. You have always had that potential, Lyra. You just needed to see it for yourself. Strength is not given. It is earned, cultivated, and recognized within. Lyra nodded slowly. She felt a strange sense of pride, not just in herself, but in the connection she now shared with her father. It was difficult to describe, this bond that had been hidden for so long. Yet it was real, and it filled her with a sense of purpose she had never known. The following days brought new challenges. News arrived of rising tensions in the city, whispers of a hostile faction seeking to exploit Zithara's resources. The alien leaders were concerned, but many dismissed the threat, believing their power unassailable. Lyra, however, could see the danger clearly. She remembered the lessons Adrian had taught her: anticipation, preparation, and courage. One afternoon, as she trained with Adrian in the barracks, a sudden alarm rang out. Red lights flashed across the walls. A hostile group had infiltrated the city, attacking key points of defense. Chaos erupted as soldiers scrambled to respond. Lyra felt a surge of adrenaline. She had been training for this, not just in combat but in thought and strategy. She moved with purpose, guiding younger recruits and helping organize defenses. Adrian fought alongside her, calm and precise, his presence a steady anchor amidst the chaos. Together, they moved through the city, countering attacks, rescuing civilians, and preventing destruction. Lyra felt the thrill of action, the satisfaction of using her mind as much as her strength. She realized that humans survived not because they were physically superior, but because they were clever, adaptable, and unafraid to act when others hesitated. As the battle subsided, Lyra stood beside Adrian, surveying the damage and the recovery efforts. She felt a deep respect for him, not just as a warrior, but as a father, a protector, and a human being who had shown her a new way to face the world. "You've taught me so much," she said softly. "And yet I feel like this is just the beginning. There is so much more to learn, isn't there?" Adrian smiled. "Yes, this is only the beginning. Life will test you, Lyra, in ways you cannot yet imagine. But I have faith that you will rise to meet every challenge. You are stronger than you know." Lyra felt a sense of determination settle over her. She no longer feared the world or doubted her abilities. With her father by her side, she felt ready to face anything. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but she knew she would not face it alone. And so, the human and his alien daughter stood together, gazing at the glowing city of Zithara. A bond that had been hidden for years was now revealed, and with it came the promise of growth, courage, and a future neither of them could have imagined. Lyra had discovered the truth, and in doing so had begun to discover herself. The city continued its constant hum, unaware of the bond being forged above it, unaware that a human warrior and his daughter were preparing for challenges that could shape the destiny of Zithara itself. Lyra felt a spark of excitement, knowing that the lessons she had learned were only the start of something far greater. The morning air on Zithara was crisp, carrying the scent of the city and the faint hum of distant engines. Lyra woke before dawn, her mind racing with thoughts of the lessons she had learned from Adrian. She had been training for weeks now, learning not just combat techniques but human philosophy, patience, and strategy. Every day she felt herself changing, becoming sharper, stronger, and more aware. Today, however, felt different. There was an urgency in the air, a quiet tension that tugged at her nerves. She sensed that her father would challenge her in a way that would truly test her limits. She found Adrian already in the training grounds, waiting for her. He stood in the early sunlight, stretching, his expression calm but alert. Lyra felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had seen his skill before, had practiced under his guidance, but today she had a feeling it would be more intense. "Are you ready?" Adrian asked, his voice steady but carrying a hint of challenge. Lyra squared her shoulders. "I'm ready." "Good. Today you will see what it truly means to be a human warrior." They began with a series of exercises designed to test reflexes, agility, and thinking under pressure. Lyra had improved immensely, but Adrian's methods were relentless. He did not just want her to mimic movements. He wanted her to understand timing, strategy, and adaptation. At first, Lyra struggled. Adrian moved with fluidity, anticipating her every move, correcting her mistakes without raising his voice. She tried to keep up, but her movements were sloppy, her reactions delayed. She grew frustrated, her breaths quickening as sweat dripped down her face. "You are thinking too much about strength," Adrian said calmly, blocking one of her attacks. "Focus on observation. Predict, then act. Strength alone will not win." Lyra clenched her fists. "I am observing," she snapped, but she realized he was right. She had relied on raw power before, ignoring the small details, the subtle changes in his stance, the way he shifted his weight. Adrian demonstrated again, slow and precise, his movements deliberate. Watch carefully. Every opponent has a rhythm. Humans survive by learning to read it and adapt. Lyra studied him, her eyes sharp now, noticing the smallest shifts in his posture. When she attempted the sequence again, her strikes were cleaner, her movements faster, more controlled. She landed a hit on his shoulder and he nodded slightly. "Better," he said. "You are beginning to understand." Hours passed, the sun climbing higher. Lyra felt exhaustion creep into her limbs, but she refused to stop. She pushed herself further than ever before, testing her limits, driven by a need to prove herself, not just to Adrian, but to herself. Finally, Adrian called a halt. "Enough for now," he said. "You are learning quickly, but training is only part of it. There is another lesson you must see before you can truly understand what it means to be human." Lyra frowned. "Another lesson? What do you mean?" Adrian's expression turned serious. "There are forces in this city that underestimate humans. You need to see that strength is not just about skill. It is about courage, presence, and action when it matters most." Before Lyra could ask another question, a sudden commotion erupted near the edge of the training grounds. Shouts echoed through the air, and the ground trembled with the approach of heavy vehicles. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. A group of rogue mercenaries had infiltrated the city, attacking the outskirts and threatening innocent civilians. Panic spread through the streets, and the city guards struggled to respond. Lyra felt a mix of fear and adrenaline. This was her chance to see the human warrior in action, to understand the lessons Adrian had spoken of. Adrian's expression hardened. "Stay close to me," he said. "Watch and learn." The human moved with astonishing speed, his body a blur as he intercepted the first wave of attackers. Lyra's eyes widened. He struck with precision, disarming enemies and redirecting their momentum, never using more force than necessary. Every movement had purpose. Every action was calculated and efficient. Lyra tried to follow, but she stumbled in her haste, nearly colliding with a civilian. Adrian was there in an instant, steadying her and guiding her away from danger. "Patience," he said calmly. "Observe first, then act." She watched him again, this time noticing the small details, the way he scanned the environment, the way he predicted attacks, the subtle shifts in posture and timing. He was not just fighting, he was controlling the flow of the battle, guiding the chaos with skill and awareness. When the attackers realized they could not overpower him, they regrouped and launched a coordinated assault. Lyra felt fear creep in, but Adrian's presence was steady, reassuring. He did not panic. He did not hesitate. Instead, he analyzed, adapted, and countered with perfect timing. Lyra found herself following his lead, using the techniques he had taught her. She anticipated movements, dodged attacks, and even managed to strike effectively against one of the mercenaries. Adrian nodded in approval, a small smile appearing for the first time that day. The battle continued, the clash of weapons echoing through the city. Lyra's confidence grew with each encounter, her respect for her father deepening. She realized that humans were not weak. They were resilient, clever, and courageous, able to face overwhelming odds with determination and strategy. After what felt like hours, the last of the attackers were subdued or driven away. The city guards arrived to secure the area, and civilians cautiously emerged from hiding. Lyra stood beside Adrian, breathing heavily, her body exhausted but her spirit alive with exhilaration. "You see now," Adrian said quietly, "why humans are respected, even feared, despite our numbers. We survive because we adapt, because we act with courage, and because we refuse to surrender to fear." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. She had seen it firsthand, witnessed the calm strength and precision of the human warrior. She had mocked him before, dismissed him as weak, but now she understood. He was extraordinary, and more importantly, he was her father. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the training ground. Lyra felt a shift inside her, a growing awareness of her own potential. She realized that the lessons Adrian had taught her were not just about combat. They were about life, about facing challenges with courage, intelligence, and determination. That evening, they returned to the terrace overlooking the city. Lyra's thoughts were heavy with everything she had witnessed. She felt a mix of pride, awe, and determination. "You are impressive," she said softly, almost reluctantly. I see now why my mother always spoke highly of you. You are incredible." Adrian smiled. "Thank you, Lyra. But remember, being impressive is not the goal. Understanding yourself, learning from experience, and growing stronger, that is the path." Lyra nodded. She felt a strange connection to him, a bond that went beyond blood. She had mocked him before, underestimated him, but now she was beginning to respect him, to see him not just as a warrior, but as a father, a mentor, and a guide. Over the next few days, Lyra's training intensified. Adrian introduced new techniques, combining human strategy with alien agility. He taught her to read opponents, to anticipate movements, and to act decisively. Lyra absorbed the lessons quickly, her body and mind growing stronger with each passing day. The city began to take notice. Other young recruits saw her transformation, her confidence, and her skill. Those who had once mocked her now paused, unsure of what to think. Lyra had become a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of what humans could achieve when combined with alien resilience and determination. One afternoon, as they trained near the city's edge, Adrian paused and looked at Lyra. "There is one more lesson," he said. "It is the most important. Strength is not just physical, it is moral, emotional, and mental. It is the courage to stand up for what is right, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to face danger without hesitation." Lyra listened intently. She understood now that her journey was not just about learning to fight. It was about understanding responsibility, courage, and the power of choice. Suddenly, a warning alarm rang through the city. Reports came in of a larger, more organized attack by a hostile alien faction. The city's defenses were stretched thin and panic threatened to spread. Lyra felt her heart race. This was the ultimate test, not just of her combat skills, but of everything Adrian had taught her. Adrian placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stay focused, Lyra. Remember what you have learned. You are ready." Together, they moved toward the heart of the city, preparing to face the threat. Lyra's confidence was tempered by caution, but she felt no fear, not as long as Adrian was beside her. She knew now that humans were not defined by weakness, but by the courage to rise when others faltered. As they approached the conflict, Lyra glanced at her father. She saw strength, experience, and calm determination. She felt pride swelling in her chest, not just for him, but for herself. She had begun to understand the true meaning of being human, and in doing so had discovered a new part of herself. The battle was about to begin, and Lyra felt ready. She would fight, she would protect, and she would learn. And through it all, she would stand beside the human warrior who was not only her father, but her teacher, her guide, and her inspiration. The city of Zithra held its breath, unaware that the rise of a new warrior, half alien, half human, was unfolding. Lyra's journey had reached a turning point, one that would test her strength, her courage, and the bond she shared with Adrian Kane. She was no longer the girl who mocked a human warrior. She was his daughter, his apprentice, and a warrior in her own right. And she would prove that humans, even in a galaxy of powerful aliens, could rise to greatness. The city of Zithra had begun to settle into a fragile calm. The mercenary attacks of the past weeks had left the citizens uneasy, and even the city guards were on edge. Yet, amid the lingering tension, Lyra found herself growing stronger, both in body and mind. She had trained tirelessly with Adrian, learning the subtle human methods of observation, patience, and strategy. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with determination, refusing to retreat or falter. Early in the morning, Lyra met Adrian at the outskirts of the city, where the air was cooler, and the hum of the urban life was softened by distance. The training ground stretched before them, an open expanse of metal platforms, practice dummies, and scattered obstacles. Adrian had chosen this location intentionally. Here, she could train without distractions, but also simulate real-world scenarios with greater freedom. "Today, we focus on adaptability," Adrian said, his voice calm but firm. "You have learned the techniques, the strength, and the strategy, but knowing is not enough. You must learn to adapt to circumstances that are unpredictable. That is what separates survival from failure." Lyra nodded, her hair catching the morning sunlight. She felt the weight of her father's words. Adaptability was something she had not fully understood before. She had relied on speed, on her natural agility, on instinct. But Adrian wanted her to think ahead, to anticipate, to be flexible. He demonstrated a series of movements, combining striking, dodging, and countering in a fluid sequence. His motions were precise, yet he altered them slightly each time, forcing Lyra to adjust. She tried to follow, but at first she struggled. Every misstep reminded her that strength alone was not enough. "Stop thinking about strength," Adrian said gently. "Focus on the situation, think, observe, adjust." Lyra clenched her fists and tried again. This time she noticed a shift in Adrian's stance before he moved, allowing her to anticipate and counter one of his strikes. She felt a rush of triumph, and Adrian nodded in approval. "Better," he said. "See, you are beginning to understand. Humans survive because we learn, because we observe, and because we adjust to the unexpected." They trained for hours, sweat dripping, muscles straining, but Lyra began to feel a new confidence. She was no longer merely mimicking Adrian. She was thinking, reacting, and adapting. She began to anticipate his moves, sometimes even catching him off guard, and each small victory fueled her determination. After training, they rested near the edge of the city, overlooking the sprawling metropolis below. The twin suns reflected off the buildings, casting long shadows across the streets. Lyra's chest heaved from exertion, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "You've changed so much in such a short time," Adrian said quietly. "I see strength in you that goes beyond physical ability. I see determination, courage, and a mind that learns quickly. You are ready for more." Lyra felt a surge of pride, but also a twinge of doubt. "More?" she asked. "What do you mean?" Adrian's gaze was steady. "We will move beyond training exercises. You will experience challenges that are real, where lives are at stake, and where your decisions matter. Only then will you truly understand what it means to be a human warrior." Lyra's heart pounded. She had seen danger before during the mercenary attacks, but this sounded different. Real danger where mistakes could have serious consequences. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Over the next few days, Adrian introduced new challenges. They simulated ambushes, hostage rescues, and tactical navigation through urban terrain. Lyra learned to analyze situations quickly, to make split-second decisions, and to trust her instincts while remaining calm under pressure. Each exercise tested not just her body, but her mind, her judgment, and her courage. One afternoon, Adrian decided it was time for a more immersive challenge. He led Lyra to a deserted sector of the city, an area with abandoned buildings and narrow alleyways. "Here," he said, "you will face a simulation that mimics real combat scenarios. Pay attention, adapt, and act. Success depends on your ability to think and react." Lyra's eyes scanned the area, noting the shadows, the angles, and the potential threats. Adrian handed her a small device which projected holographic enemies that moved unpredictably. Lyra's heart raced as she activated it. The figures sprang to life, attacking from different directions, forcing her to dodge, strike, and counter. At first, she struggled. The holographic enemies were fast and unpredictable. She misjudged distances, misread movements, and faltered. Adrian watched silently, letting her experience the challenge without interference. Then, Lyra remembered his teachings. She slowed her breathing, observed patterns, and anticipated attacks. She moved with precision, striking with calculated force, and gradually gained control of the simulation. She felt a rush of triumph as the final holographic enemy fell. Adrian clapped lightly, a rare expression of pride on his face. "Excellent," he said. "You are learning to combine strength, intelligence, and adaptability. That is what humans rely on to survive and thrive." Lyra smiled, her exhaustion forgotten. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She was no longer the girl who mocked the human warrior. She was learning to think like him, to move like him, and to embrace the courage that humans carried even in the face of overwhelming odds. The next week brought a new challenge: teamwork. Adrian emphasized that humans often succeed because they can work together, combining strengths and covering weaknesses. Lyra was paired with other young recruits, some of whom had once looked down on her. She found herself leading them, guiding their actions, and teaching them strategies she had learned from Adrian. At first, the group struggled. Miscommunication and hesitation caused mistakes. Lyra felt frustrated but remembered Adrian's words: patience and observation were key. She adjusted her approach, listening to her teammates, anticipating their movements, and coordinating attacks. Slowly, the group improved. By the end of the exercise, they moved as a cohesive unit, completing the mission efficiently and effectively. Lyra felt pride in her team, but also in herself. She realized that leadership was not just about strength. It was about understanding, guiding, and inspiring others. She had learned to balance her own abilities with the needs of the group, a lesson that would serve her well in the challenges to come. One evening, as the twin suns began to set, Lyra and Adrian stood on a high terrace overlooking the city. The streets below glowed with the light of neon signs and distant vehicles, a reminder of the bustling life of Zithera. "You've grown a great deal," Adrian said softly. "But there is still more to learn. Strength and skill are important, but so are character and heart. A warrior is measured not just by victories, but by courage, integrity, and the willingness to protect others." Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She thought of the mercenary attacks, the civilians she had helped guide to safety, and the lessons she had learned in both combat and strategy. She understood now that being a warrior was about more than fighting. It was about making the right choices, even when they were difficult. Adrian continued, "The galaxy is full of challenges, Lyra. You will face opponents who are stronger, faster, or more numerous than you. But humans survive because we do not give up. We adapt, we learn, and we act with purpose. That is what I want you to remember." Lyra felt a deep sense of connection to him. She had once mocked humans, believing them weak. Now she understood their strength in a way she had never imagined, and she understood her father in a way she never had before. Over the following days, Lyra continued to train with Adrian, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. They shared stories of the past, of Adrian's experiences in distant galaxies, and of the challenges he had faced as a human in an alien-dominated universe. Lyra listened intently, absorbing every lesson, every insight. One afternoon, as they practiced tactical maneuvers, a message arrived from the city's command center. A hostile faction was regrouping near the outer sectors, planning another incursion. The city guards were stretched thin, and the situation was becoming urgent. Adrian's expression grew serious. "It is time," he said. "You have trained well, Lyra. Now you must apply what you have learned. This is not a simulation. Lives are at stake, and your decisions will matter." Lyra felt a surge of determination. She had learned strategy, adaptability, and courage. She had learned to lead, to inspire, and to act decisively. Now she would face real danger, and she would prove to herself and to everyone that she was capable. As they prepared to move toward the outer sectors, Lyra glanced at her father. She saw strength, wisdom, and calm determination. She felt pride swelling in her chest, not just for him, but for herself. She was ready to face the challenge, to apply everything she had learned, and to embrace her role as a warrior. The city of Zithera watched in silence, unaware that a new chapter was unfolding. A chapter in which a young alien girl, guided by her human father, would rise to face danger, lead others, and demonstrate the courage and ingenuity that defined humans throughout the galaxy. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of opportunity. She was no longer just a student, no longer just the girl who had mocked a human warrior. She was a warrior in her own right, ready to face the challenges ahead with courage, intelligence, and the strength of her newfound heritage. And as she moved beside Adrian, she felt a bond deeper than blood, a connection forged through trust, respect, and shared purpose. Together, they would face the coming storm, and Zithera would witness the rise of a human alien warrior unlike any the city had ever known. The city of Zithera was tense. Even the usually calm streets were filled with an undercurrent of fear. Rumors had spread of a hostile alien faction gathering forces near the city's outer sectors. Citizens whispered in worry, children clutched their parents, and the city guards moved with haste but uncertainty. Lyra stood at the edge of the command center balcony, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where dark shapes began to move. Beside her, Adrian Kane stood with calm determination. His presence was a steadying force, the embodiment of the courage and skill he had spent weeks teaching her to understand. Lyra felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety. This was no training exercise, this was real. Lives were at stake, and her decisions could make the difference between victory and disaster. "Are you ready?" Adrian asked, his voice steady. Lyra straightened, shoulders squared. "I'm ready," she said, though her heart beat quickly in her chest. Adrian nodded. "Good. Remember what we have practiced. Observe, adapt, lead, and act decisively, and trust yourself." Lyra took a deep breath, recalling every lesson, every challenge, every training session she had endured. She felt the strength of her human heritage mingling with her alien abilities. Humans survived because they adapted, they calculated, and they refused to give in to fear. Now it was her turn to embody those lessons. The first wave of attackers approached swiftly, moving in formations designed to overwhelm the city's defenses. Their ships hovered low, weapons glinting in the sunlight, while ground units moved with precision, ready to breach the outer sectors. Lyra felt her pulse quicken but forced herself to remain calm. Adrian turned to her. "Lead the recruits. Guide them through the first line of defense. I will handle the main assault." Lyra nodded, stepping forward with newfound confidence. She called out commands, directing recruits with clarity and authority. Some hesitated at first, unsure of her leadership, but they soon followed her cues. She had learned to inspire trust through action, showing competence and courage rather than demanding it. The first clash came suddenly. The alien attackers moved faster than anyone had anticipated, pressing hard against the city's barricades. Lyra's recruits faltered, but she quickly adjusted their positions, redirecting them to cover vulnerable points. She anticipated movements, predicted attacks, and struck decisively when needed. Adrian's voice rang out, calm but firm. "Lyra, flank the left side. Use the alleyways for cover and strike from unexpected angles." Lyra followed his instructions, weaving through the narrow streets and using her agility to surprise enemy units. Her strikes were precise, her decisions calculated. Every move reflected what she had learned from Adrian: observation, strategy, and the courage to act when hesitation could be fatal. The enemy was relentless. Their numbers seemed overwhelming, and their tactics were coordinated. But Lyra remained focused, guiding her team, covering their weaknesses and exploiting opportunities. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Each successful maneuver inspired confidence in the recruits, and their actions became more coordinated and effective. Amid the chaos, Lyra saw civilians trapped in a partially collapsed building. Her instincts screamed at her to act. Without hesitation, she darted toward the structure, moving with agility and determination. The debris was heavy, and the building threatened to collapse further, but Lyra calculated her movements carefully. She guided the civilians out safely, her courage shining through. Adrian was nearby, fighting off a group of attackers with calm precision. His movements were fluid, each strike calculated to neutralize threats without unnecessary force. Lyra watched him, feeling a surge of admiration. He was not just a warrior, he was a teacher, a protector, and now, in the heat of battle, her anchor. The battle escalated. The alien faction deployed advanced weaponry, targeting key points in the city's defenses. Lyra and Adrian coordinated their actions through quick signals and brief commands. Their synergy was remarkable, a combination of human ingenuity and alien agility. Lyra felt empowered, knowing she was not just following instructions but contributing strategically to the defense of her city. As the fight continued, a massive enemy vehicle approached, heavily armed and shielded. It threatened to break through the barricades and wreak havoc on the city center. Lyra felt a surge of fear but pushed it aside. This was her test, her moment to embody everything she had learned. Adrian's voice came through clearly. "Lyra, we need to disable that vehicle." "I will distract it, but you must find a way to exploit its weakness." Lyra scanned the vehicle quickly, her mind working at lightning speed. She noticed a series of weak points near the rear thrusters. Acting swiftly, she directed her team to create a diversion, drawing the enemy's attention. Then, with careful precision, she moved to the rear of the vehicle, using her agility to avoid detection. With a burst of calculated force, she struck the weak points, disabling the thrusters. The vehicle shuddered and came to a halt, its threat neutralized. Her team cheered, and even some of the city guards looked on with admiration. Lyra felt a surge of pride. She had acted decisively, strategically, and successfully. Adrian arrived beside her, his expression calm but pleased. "Well done," he said. "That was exactly the kind of thinking I wanted you to demonstrate. You are learning not just to survive, but to lead." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She realized that her growth was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and strategic. She had become a warrior capable of making critical decisions under pressure, and she had earned the respect of those around her. The battle raged on for hours, but with Lyra leading her team and Adrian coordinating larger strategies, the city's defenses began to hold. The alien attackers, despite their numbers and advanced technology, could not break through the combined strength, intelligence, and courage of Zithra's defenders. Lyra felt a sense of exhilaration and focus unlike anything she had experienced before. Every decision, every action mattered, and she embraced the responsibility fully. She guided her recruits through ambushes, protected civilians, and countered attacks with strategic precision. Each success reinforced her confidence and demonstrated the true power of human ingenuity combined with alien skill. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, the last of the enemy forces retreated. Zithra was battered, but it stood strong. The citizens emerged cautiously from their hiding places, witnessing the aftermath of a defense that had been hard-fought but successful. Lyra stood beside Adrian, breathing heavily but feeling an immense sense of pride. The city had survived, and she had played a critical role in that survival. She realized that she had not just learned to fight, she had learned to lead, to inspire, and to act with courage and intelligence in the face of overwhelming odds. Adrian placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying and reassuring. "You have done well, Lyra," he said. "Not just because of your skill, but because of your courage, your mind, and your heart. You are a true warrior." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You taught me everything, how to think, how to act, how to survive. I understand now what it means to be human." Adrian smiled faintly. "And now you can teach others." Humans survive because we share knowledge, because we inspire others to rise above fear and weakness. You have done that today. The citizens of Zithra began to emerge fully, their faces filled with gratitude and admiration. Word of the defense spread quickly, and those who had once doubted humans or young recruits now looked with respect at Lyra. She had transformed, from a girl who had mocked a human warrior to a leader who embodied human courage and ingenuity. That night, as the city slowly recovered, Lyra and Adrian stood together on a high terrace, overlooking Zithra. The lights of the city shimmered below, a reminder of the lives they had protected and the strength that had defended them. "You've come a long way," Adrian said quietly. "You are no longer just my student. You are my daughter, my partner in battle, and a true warrior of this city." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep connection to him. She had discovered her father, learned from him, and grown into the warrior she had always been capable of becoming. The lessons of courage, intelligence, and adaptability were now part of her, guiding her in every thought and action. "I never thought I could be like this," she said softly. "I mocked humans, I thought they were weak, but now I see. Humans survive because they refuse to give up, because they learn, adapt, and act with courage. I understand now. And I want to keep learning, keep growing, and keep protecting." Adrian nodded, pride evident in his eyes. "And you will. There will always be challenges ahead, but you are ready. You have the mind, the skill, and the heart to face anything. And I will always be here to guide you." Lyra felt a sense of peace and determination. She had embraced her human heritage, learned to trust herself, and discovered the strength that lay within. She had faced real danger, made critical decisions, and emerged victorious. And through it all, she had forged an unbreakable bond with her father. As the twin moons of Zithra rose into the night sky, Lyra and Adrian stood together, ready for whatever the future might bring. The city was safe for now, but they both knew that challenges would come again. And when they did, Lyra would face them as a warrior, a leader, and the daughter of a human hero. The journey had been long, filled with lessons, struggles, and discoveries. Lyra had mocked a human warrior once, but now she understood him, respected him, and embraced the legacy he had passed to her. She was no longer a child in the shadow of others. She was a hero in her own right, ready to rise whenever duty called. And as the night settled over Zithra, the city's lights glowing softly beneath them, Lyra felt a deep sense of purpose. She was human, she was strong, and she was ready. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage, intelligence, and heart. And so a new chapter began, not just for Lyra, but for Zithra, and for the legacy of humans across the galaxy. A warrior had risen, and the city would never forget her name.